Corinne gripped my hand a little too tight as we pulled into the gravel lot. "Smile, babe," she whispered. "Let's not start this weekend off heavy." I didn't say anything. I just looked out the window at the oversized A-frame lodge, all glass and cedar and fake serenity. The kind of place you rent when you want everyone to think you're living the dream. It sat at the edge of a pine-covered ridge, nothing but woods and silence beyond it. My name's Rowan Ellis. I'm 37. I live in Sacramento. I write code, build tech, and somewhere along the way, I almost lost my family doing it. This trip. It was supposed to be a reset. That's what Corinne called it. Her idea, not mine. She'd said it'd be good for Jeremy, our 10-year-old, to spend time around real connection again. And apparently, that meant dragging us into the mountains with a bunch of her old high school friends and her cousin, Lila, for some forced bonding at a private retreat. I'd said no, twice. But she wore me down with smiles and "we need this" speeches and a tone that said I didn't have much of a choice. "Look, Daddy," Jeremy shouted from the back seat. "They've got kayaks in a treehouse. Before we start, how's your day going and where are you joining from?" He was grinning wide, already halfway out the door. Corinne laughed like it was the best thing she'd seen all month. "See," she said, her voice syrupy. "He's already loving it." I grabbed the last bag from the trunk and followed them toward the front porch. Inside, it was all polished wood floors and sleek furniture, like a magazine ad. Evan, the owner of the lodge and Corinne's very good friend from childhood, came out to greet us. Tall, good hair, 2-day scruff, way too comfortable pulling Corinne into a hug that lasted a second too long. "Welcome to paradise," he said, flashing that fake host smile. "Glad you made it, Rowan." I nodded, barely. My grip on the duffel tightened. Corinne turned to me, still smiling. "Isn't it amazing?" I scanned the room. Tara, Evan's girlfriend, waved from the kitchen. Lila was already on her phone. I forced a smile and said, "Yeah, it's something." I meant it in the worst possible way. Evan reached for Corinne's bag without asking. She let him. Their hands brushed. She didn't pull away. That's when I felt it, that drop in my gut. They'd been talking, a lot, too much. Jeremy was already running up the stairs, calling dibs on the top bunk. Corinne leaned toward me with that Stepford wife tone and said, "Let's just enjoy this." "Okay." I stared at her, trying to figure out what game we were playing. Then I turned away and followed my son up the stairs. Jeremy had already tossed his bag on the top bunk by the time I reached the loft. The window looked out over the woods, thick pine all the way to the edge of a rocky slope. No service bars, no signals, just birdsong and wind. He plopped down on the mattress, legs swinging. "Can I go see the treehouse?" "Take your shoes off first," I said, "and wait till we unpack." Downstairs, voices carried. Evan and Tara laughing, Corinne chiming in like she'd known them forever. I opened our duffel, trying to push down the tightening in my chest. An hour later, we were all gathered in the main room, sitting on couches that probably cost more than my first car. The place looked like a movie set. Fireplace blazing, wine glasses clinking, designer throw blankets everywhere. I sat at the edge of one couch while Corinne curled up across from me, half drunk and glowing, tucked into Evan's side like it was casual. Tara was dealing cards for some kind of party game Jeremy wanted to play. And Lila sat scrolling her phone, legs tucked under her, glass of rosé in hand. "So," Evan said, pouring another round. "Remember that time Corinne got grounded for sneaking out with my dad's truck?" Corinne burst out laughing before he even finished. "Oh my God, stop! That truck was older than us." "You couldn't reach the pedals," Evan added, nudging her with his shoulder. They laughed like it was the funniest thing on earth. Tara rolled her eyes but smiled, clearly used to this show. Lila mumbled, "Classic Corinne," without looking up. I didn't laugh. No one noticed. "Babe," Corinne said suddenly, looking at me. "You remember that story, right? I've told it before." I held her gaze for a second. "You tell a lot of stories." She blinked, then turned back to Evan, like I'd just passed through her. Jeremy shouted, "I got it!" and jumped off the floor, showing Tara his stack of cards. "High score!" she said, high-fiving him. "You're crushing this game, dude." I watched the fire snap and spit. Everyone around it felt like they'd known each other for decades. I was just there to fill a seat. At one point, Lila leaned over and whispered something to Tara. They both laughed low and sharp before glancing in my direction. I got up to grab another bottle of water. No one stopped me. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Jeremy was out cold in the bunk above me, mouth open, one arm dangling. I heard footsteps pass by our room, soft ones, heading toward the back of the house. I waited. Then the creak of the porch door. Then laughter. I pushed the blanket off and stood at the window. The porch light was dim, but I saw their silhouettes, Corinne and Evan, sitting close on one of the wicker benches, shoulders touching. Her hand moved, his moved. More laughter. I clenched my jaw and stepped back from the glass. Don't jump to conclusions. It's just talking. But I'd seen her face around him, heard her voice shift, watched her body language change when he walked into the room. This trip wasn't a reset. It was a setup. Jeremy rolled over in his sleep, mumbling something about marshmallows. I sat back on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor, my fists tight against my thighs. Outside, they were still laughing. I stood up and walked out of the room. I stepped out onto the porch just as the sky started to lighten. The bench was empty. No voices, no Corinne, no Evan. Just cold mountain air and the sour taste in the back of my throat. Inside, the kitchen smelled like burnt coffee. Someone had started the pot and walked away. Tara's mug sat on the counter, lipstick smudge still fresh. I stood there, waiting for something. Noise. A greeting. Some proof the world hadn't shifted under me overnight. Instead, Corinne strolled in barefoot, wearing a fleece she definitely didn't pack. Evans. I recognized the logo. "Hey," she said, like I hadn't been staring at the ceiling all night. "You sleep out there." She smiled like it was no big deal. Just talking. It was warm, peaceful. Before I could respond, Jeremy came bounding down the stairs in sneakers and a hoodie. "Can we go on that trail today? The one by the creek?" Corinne turned to me fast. "You should take him. It'll be good for you guys. I think we're just going to hang out around here." She didn't ask, she directed, like the decision had already been made. I paused, long enough for her to notice, long enough for it to register. But she just sipped her coffee and turned away. Jeremy looked up at me, hopeful. I nodded. "Grab your water bottle." He cheered and ran off to get it. Corinne never looked back. We took the narrow trail that cut into the woods behind the shed. It wound along the creek, surrounded by pine and thick brush. Jeremy skipped ahead, tossing pebbles into the stream, asking if we'd see deer or maybe even a bear. I told him probably just squirrels. We walked maybe 45 minutes. I kept an eye on the sun through the trees, not wanting to lose track of the clearing. Jeremy told me about a science project he wanted to do on tree rings. I listened, actually listened, for the first time in a while. It was the most peaceful I'd felt in months. When we stepped out of the woods, I felt it before I saw it. Too quiet. The lodge sat still in the clearing, but the SUVs were gone. The gear that had been stacked near the porch, coolers, backpacks, boxes, vanished. Jeremy noticed right after me. "Where'd everybody go?" I walked faster toward the porch. Something was off, wrong. The front door was shut, curtains drawn. I tried the handle, locked. "What the heck?" I muttered. Then I saw it, taped to the wooden post near the steps. One sheet of paper, folded in half. I pulled it free. My name wasn't on it, nobody's was, just a few lines in black marker. "This is for the best, trust me." Evan's handwriting, the ground tilted, not metaphorically. I actually had to take a step back. Jeremy tugged my sleeve. "Dad." I folded the note and shoved it in my back pocket. "They probably went to look for us." He looked confused. "Without the cars." "Maybe they took the trail the other way," I said fast. Too fast. I could hear it in my own voice. He stared at the empty driveway. "All of them." "Yeah. Maybe they're messing with us, like a game." I forced a smile. It didn't land. Jeremy looked up at the house. "But why'd they lock it?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. Instead, I walked around the porch, checking windows. Locked tight, no backpacks inside, no jackets. Even the dish rack was cleared. "Dad?" "I know," I said. "Just hang close." He followed me as I circled the building. Back shed. Empty. Firewood pile. Gone. The small stack of kayaks by the edge of the pond. Nowhere in sight. Everything had been stripped. Like we'd never been there. Like someone had erased us. Jeremy's breathing picked up. Are we alone?" I squatted in front of him. "We're okay." That's not what I asked. He was 10, but not stupid. I saw it in his face. He felt it too. I put a hand on his shoulder. We're not alone. We're just surprised. I tried the back door, also locked. Then I looked up at the ridgeline. No smoke from the chimney, no sound, no footprints in the gravel, just silence. I stood slowly, scanning the tree line. Jeremy asked, "Should we wait here?" I didn't answer. I was already walking toward the treehouse. The treehouse was empty, floor swept, pillows gone. The little telescope Jeremy had looked through yesterday, gone too. They didn't just leave, they stripped this place clean. I scanned the yard. No wrappers, no plastic cups. Even the trash bins were missing. Who takes the garbage cans on vacation? Jeremy was standing beside me, arms crossed tight. "Where's all the stuff?" I swallowed hard. They must have taken it with them. Why? I don't know. That wasn't true. I knew. I just didn't know why yet. We spent the next couple hours checking everything. The storage shed, the basement crawl space, even under the deck. Food, gone. Coolers, gone. Water jugs, gone. There wasn't a cracker left behind. They didn't miss anything. Not one damn thing. They meant for us to feel this. Jeremy's voice cracked a little. "Dad, what are we supposed to eat?" "We've got some stuff in my backpack," I said. "Protein bars, water filter. We're good." He nodded, like he was trying to believe me. Like if I didn't panic, he wouldn't either. I kept my voice calm, steady. "Remember that survival show you watch? The one with the guy in Alaska?" "Yeah," he said, perking up a little. "Wilderness man." "Right. Think of this like an episode. We're just doing our own version, and we're gonna win." That lit something in him. He smiled, small but real. "Okay, so what do we do first?" "First," I said, checking the sun, "we figure out where we sleep tonight." By late afternoon, I'd cleared the backside of the porch and swept out the overhang where the deck sloped down. Dry ground, some coverage. It'd have to do. Jeremy sat cross-legged, chewing a corner of a granola bar. I'd let him have one. Only one. I didn't tell him I'd brought 5 total. I pulled out the emergency blanket from my pack. Thin silver foil, not much, but better than nothing. Jeremy helped me tuck the edges under some flat stones to hold it down. "Will it keep us warm?" he asked. "Warm enough?" The air was already cooling. Nights up here dropped fast. I sat beside him as he lay down. He looked up at the wood slats under the deck. "This is kinda cool," he said. "Like camping." "Exactly." He yawned. "Will they come back tomorrow?" I didn't answer right away. "Maybe. We'll be ready either way." He rolled onto his side, clutching the blanket. "Do you think Mom knew?" That hit like a punch in the throat. "I don't know," I said quietly. "Go to sleep." He nodded and closed his eyes. I waited, watched. Every snap in the woods made me turn. Every gust of wind felt like footsteps. I held the knife from my belt in my lap, blade open. It wasn't much, just a folding tool I kept in my bag. But in that moment, it felt like the only thing between us and the dark. They didn't panic leave. No one forgets everything. No one clears out with that kind of precision unless they plan to. I sat with my back against the porch beam, boots on the blanket edge to keep Jeremy covered. Somewhere past midnight, I finally let it settle. They hadn't left us. They'd removed us. No rescue was coming. No mix-up. No misunderstanding. This was on purpose. Corinne, Evan, every single one of them. They'd smiled in my face, clinked wine glasses, tucked my son in bed, and then vanished. I looked over at Jeremy. He was curled up tight, face half buried in the foil, lips moving in sleep, probably dreaming about marshmallows again. I gripped the knife harder. I wasn't going to let him die out here. Not my son. Not like this. He was gonna live, and someone was going to pay. The second the sun cracked through the trees, I nudged Jeremy's shoulder. "Up," I whispered. "We gotta move." He stirred, rubbed his eyes, then looked around like he half expected everything to be normal again. "They're still gone." "Yeah, come on, come. We're not waiting around to find out what else they took." We packed what little we had. 2 protein bars, my water filter straw, the knife, the blanket. I rolled the note from Evan and shoved it deeper in my pocket. We headed toward the creek. I remembered a ranger post marked on an old map Evan had flashed at dinner the first night, half joking about fire warnings and cell dead zones. Southeast of the lodge, near a bend in the stream. It was a long shot, but it was something. The trail sloped down fast. Wet rocks, moss patches, thick roots. Jeremy kept up pretty well at first, but I could see the weight building in his steps. To keep him moving, I went into survival show mode. Rule number 1, I said, pushing a branch aside. Water is life. What's rule number 2? He grinned. Don't eat weird mushrooms. Bingo. And rule number 3, stay positive. I nodded, even though the tight knot in my chest hadn't let go since yesterday. We stopped around mid-morning to refill at the stream. I showed him how the filter straw worked, dipping into the current and drinking slow. His face lit up like it was a science trick. Pretty cool, right? I said. Yeah, he said, mouth still pressed to the straw. Tastes like dirt, but cool. We found some blackberry bushes near the water line, half shaded. I showed him how to check for white fuzz and bugs before eating. He downed 6 before I could finish my sentence. This is the best hike ever, he said, lips purple. That killed me a little. By late afternoon, his pace slowed. He stopped joking. I could hear his breathing getting heavier. You good? I asked. My legs feel like jello. I knelt down. We can take a break. But only 10 minutes. We sat on a flat rock beside the creek. I let him chew half a protein bar. I didn't touch mine. He looked up after a few minutes. What if Mom didn't leave on purpose? What if she got lost too? The question hit harder than I expected. I didn't want to answer, but I had to. She knew where we were, I said. She told us to take the trail. She had the cars. He nodded slowly, but I saw the pain push behind his eyes. She wouldn't just leave me, he whispered. Right. I looked away, my jaw locked so tight it ached. I don't know what happened in her head, I said, but I know what we're gonna do. We're gonna get out of here. Together. He nodded again, this time without any words. We stopped near a shallow ridge just before sundown. Trees blocked most of the wind, and a patch of rock gave us space for a small fire. I scraped dry bark with my knife, struck it against a flat stone until sparks finally caught. Jeremy clapped when the flame took. You're basically wilderness man now. Damn right. We sat close. I kept the heat low, just enough to stay warm and cook off the damp. The woods were quiet. Not peaceful quiet. The kind that feels like it's waiting. Jeremy fell asleep fast, curled beside the fire, his head against my leg. I draped the emergency blanket over him and watched the sky go dark, piece by piece. I didn't sleep, not even for a second. I watched the trees. I thought about every detail, every move. They wanted us gone, not just left behind. Gone. Corinne, Evan, Tara, Lila, all of them. Why now? Why him? Why me? Something deeper than resentment. This wasn't just personal. There was planning, coordination. It wasn't a snap decision. I pulled the folded note out of my pocket again. This is for the best, trust me. That smug, cryptic bullshit. Jeremy twitched in his sleep, muttered something about his science project. I touched his shoulder gently, keeping him covered. He wasn't going to die out here, not while I was breathing. And if we made it back, and we would, I was going to burn every one of them down. By mid-morning, Jeremy was dragging. We'd been walking maybe 30 minutes when he stopped, leaned against a birch tree and said, Dad, my head feels like it's floating. I turned fast. His cheeks were red, sweat on his upper lip, even in the cool air. I pressed the back of my hand to his forehead. Burning up. Shit. I guided him down to a patch of moss, eased him onto his side. He didn't argue. That scared me more than anything. Okay, I said, keeping my voice steady. We're gonna rest a bit. He gave me the smallest nod and closed his eyes. I scanned the area fast, looking for cover, dry ground, anything. We weren't near a ridge or clearing, just more woods and more silence. I saw a flat area near a fallen log and moved him there, laid the blanket down, tucked it around him. His skin was hot to the touch, breathing shallow. His lips looked pale now, like the color was draining out of him. I paced in a circle, fists clenched. I needed to cool him down, fast. Hydration first, then fever control. I crouched by the stream, scooped water with the filter, made sure he drank slowly. He shivered between sips. I don't feel good, he mumbled. I know, buddy. I'm gonna fix it. I had no meds, no ice. But I remembered reading about dandelion root, diuretic, bitter, fever aid. Not perfect, but better than sitting on my ass while he burned. I scanned the nearby brush. Took a few minutes before I found a patch, bright yellow flowers, jagged leaves. I yanked them fast, roots and all, scrubbed them in the stream, split the root open with my knife, scraped out the inside, boiled stream water in my steel bottle cap over the fire, let the root steep. The water turned a dull tan. It smelled awful. I crouched beside Jeremy. Time for the worst tea of your life. He groaned but sat up enough to sip. Ugh, that's gross, he whispered. Good. That means it's working. He gave me a weak smile, then leaned into my chest and closed his eyes. The sun started going down, and he was still hot. Not worse, but not better either. I wiped his forehead with the blanket edge. He stirred. Then his voice came out, soft and cracked. Mom? I froze. He said it again, like it was a question. Mom? Where are you? My chest felt like it collapsed in on itself. I almost lost it, right there. But I didn't. I couldn't. I just held his hand and said, I'm here. I'm right here. He slipped back into sleep. The wind picked up. Cold air swept through the trees, but I didn't move. I didn't sleep. I didn't even blink. I sat beside him, staring at the fire, knife on my lap, bottle of bitter tea cooling near my foot. I looked up at the stars, eyes burning, throat tight. I don't pray, never have, but I did then. I didn't ask for much, just for him to make it, for his body to stop fighting itself, for whatever was watching us out there to back the hell off. I didn't ask for revenge, that would come later. I promised whoever was listening, if he made it, if we got out of these woods alive, someone was going to answer for what was done, every single person involved. I'd drag them into the light and burn their lives down to the foundation. But not yet. Not until Jeremy was safe. I looked at him again, still burning, but his breathing was steadier. The shakes had stopped. The fever hadn't broken, but it wasn't climbing anymore. I pulled the blanket tighter around him and shifted closer, keeping the fire stoked. I didn't blink the rest of the night. Jeremy's fever hadn't broken, but it wasn't worse. That was enough for me to push. I knelt beside him at first light. Can you walk? He nodded, weak, like even the motion of answering drained him. A little. I tore up the emergency blanket and looped it through my belt to make a shoulder sling, propped him against my side. His legs wobbled, but he held on. We left the dandelion tea behind, just carried water and the knife. I told him where we were going, up the ridge. If I was right, if that map memory was worth anything, there was a fire tower up there. I'd seen it years ago while scouting coverage zones for a drone pitch. Not marked on any trail, not part of the lodge amenities, just sitting there, rusted and forgotten. But it was high, maybe high enough to save us. We started the climb slow, Jeremy leaning hard against me, both of us slipping on wet pine needles and slick stone. He didn't talk much, just focused on breathing. I made up more fake survival rules, mostly for myself. Rule number 6, never trust flat ground. It's probably lying. Rule 7, fire beats fear, always. We stopped every 10 minutes to rest. I made sure he drank water. I counted his breaths when he slept. I didn't let myself sit longer than 5 minutes. If I sat too long, I wouldn't get back up. About halfway up the ridge, my foot caught under a root I didn't see. I went down hard, shoulder first. My wrist cracked against a rock, shooting pain through my forearm. Jeremy yelled, "Dad!" "I'm fine," I lied, clenching my teeth as I pushed up with my other hand. My wrist was already swelling. I tucked it against my stomach and kept moving. No more breaks. An hour later, we hit the tree line. I saw it before he did. A tall, rusted skeleton cutting through the sky. The fire tower. Jeremy saw my face shift. "Is that it?" "Yeah," I said, voice rough. "That's it." We pushed harder. The tower's steps were metal grates, some bent, some rusted clean through. I tested each one with my foot before letting him step. We climbed together, slow and shaking. Wind howled the higher we got. By the time we reached the top, my whole body felt like it had been wrung out and stomped on. The inside looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Broken radio, rotted bedding, busted lantern. But under a loose floorboard, I found a rusted red box. Inside, 2 granola bars, cracked emergency water pouches, and a flare gun. My hands shook as I loaded it. I stepped onto the deck, aimed at the open sky, and fired. The flare shot up in a burst of red and white, trailing smoke like blood in the air. Jeremy leaned against the wall behind me, his face pale but hopeful. Did they see it? They will. We waited. Minutes turned into hours. I kept Jeremy bundled in the blanket, fed him what was left in the box. I didn't eat. I barely drank. My head throbbed, my wrist burned. I could hear my own pulse in my ears. Jeremy leaned against me. What if they don't come? They will, I said. Someone always sees a fire in the sky. It was late afternoon when we heard it, that low, distant chop of a rotor. I staggered to the deck, waving my arms, shouting until my voice broke. The chopper rose over the trees like something out of a dream, big, black, real. They circled once, then lowered. I dropped to my knees. Jeremy crawled to me, wrapped his small, burning fingers into mine. The noise got louder. Doors opened. Hands reached for us. And the last thing I saw was his hand in mine, tight as ever, while the world finally gave way. The first thing I saw was white, ceiling tiles, fluorescent light. My arm was taped to an IV. I turned my head and winced, neck stiff, mouth dry, chest aching like I'd been cracked in half. Then I saw him, Jeremy, in the bed beside mine, hooked up too. Color back in his cheeks, sleeping, breathing. He was alive. I was too. The door creaked open and a man stepped in. Late 40s, square jaw, plain suit. He didn't look like a nurse. "You're awake," he said. No smile. I tried to sit up. "Where are we?" "St. Joseph's, Flagstaff. You've been here about 2 days. Jeremy? He's stable. Mild pneumonia, fever broke. Kid's tough." I let my head fall back against the pillow. The man stepped closer, pulled a chair up beside me. "I'm Agent Garrison, Federal." I raised an eyebrow. "Federal what? Criminal investigations, financial and insurance fraud. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound impossible, but I need you to listen." I didn't speak, just nodded once. "Your wife reported you and your son deceased 4 days ago. Claimed you drove off in a paranoid episode, said you were unstable, unmedicated, and that she'd found letters suggesting you planned to kill yourself and take your son with you." I stared at him. Words caught in my throat. He kept going. "She had forged medical records. A fake psych eval. A digital trail showing you pulled Jeremy from school without notice. Even a forged will, leaving hollow point systems to her." My jaw clenched so hard my temples ached. "She submitted the life insurance paperwork 24 hours after your supposed death," he said. "Total payout, between business and personal policies, came to over $3 million. I shook my head slowly. "You're telling me she planned this?" "All of it. She didn't act alone. We've traced phone records, GPS data, and financial movement involving Evan Tolman, Tara Keene, and a woman named Lila Holtz." "Her cousin," I muttered. Garrison nodded. "They scrubbed that lodge like pros. Took your gear, cleared your food, left one note, just enough ambiguity to suggest you wandered off in a manic state. If we hadn't caught the flare footage from a hunting drone, they might have gotten away with it." I looked over at Jeremy. He was still asleep, one arm above his head, chest rising slow. Garrison leaned in. "You understand the stakes here. What they tried to do isn't just insurance fraud. It's attempted murder, conspiracy, child endangerment. They left a 10-year-old to die." "They left my son to die," I said, my voice raw. "And me. You want to help us take them down?" he asked. I turned my head and met his eyes. "Give me the names," I said. "Give me every goddamn file you've got." He slid a folder onto my lap. "We're building the case now. But it moves faster with your cooperation. We need emails, messages, recordings, anything that can prove intent." "You'll have it," I said. "Every detail, every dirty text, every scrap of evidence. I'll bury them." He nodded once. "Good. We'll get you set up to speak with the prosecutor. This won't be easy, but with your help, we've got enough to bring them in." I didn't flinch, didn't blink. Let them come. I'd walked out of the woods with my son half dead in my arms. Now it was their turn to feel what that meant. I walked into that courtroom, wearing a borrowed suit and a wrist brace. Corinne was already sitting at the defense table, polished, cold, pretending to be confused. Evan sat beside her, jaw tight, hair slicked back like this was a press event. Tara kept whispering to her attorney. Lila wore the smug face of someone who thought she'd still walk. But me, I didn't look away. Neither did Jeremy. He sat behind me, flanked by a trauma counselor and Dana's assistant. He didn't need to speak. His voice had already done enough damage. Dana stood, calm and sharp in a navy suit, her binder thick with hell. "Your Honor," she said, "what we present today is not a case of miscommunication. It is a carefully staged, calculated attempt to profit from the death of a husband and his child." She began with receipts. Corinne's insurance paperwork filed 48 hours after our disappearance. Evan's credit card statement for bulk camping gear that vanished with us. Tara's SUV-GPS history, Lila's withdrawal trail. Then came the texts, projected on a screen for the whole courtroom to see. Evan, once they're out there, it's done. No turning back. Corinne, I want my life back. And the company. I earned it. Lila, just make sure they don't come back early. LOL. The room shifted, shoulders tensed. A juror covered her mouth. Dana dropped the next bomb, the fake will. The one leaving Hollow Point Systems solely to Corinne. She brought in the notary who'd signed it. He broke under pressure. "They paid me to stamp it," he said. "Cash. I didn't even read it." Then she played the voicemail, Corinne's voice, casual and dripping with venom. "He'll take the bait. He always does." My stomach turned. I looked toward Jeremy. He stared straight ahead, unmoving. When Dana cued the recorded statement, the lights dimmed slightly. Jeremy's voice came through the speakers, quiet, steady, and clear. When we came back from the hike, everything was gone. No cars, no food, no one was there. My dad said maybe they went to find us, but I knew something was wrong. My mom wouldn't leave my blanket. She always packs it. A juror wiped her eyes. Another leaned forward, locked in. Dana rested her hand on my shoulder as I stood. I took the stand and looked directly at the jury. I spent 10 years building a company I named after the hardest lesson I ever learned, Hollow Point Systems. I named it that because once something rips through you, you're never the same again. I shifted in my seat. I spent 2 nights in the woods listening to my son call out for his mother, while his skin burned, while he shook, while I brewed dandelion root in a bottle cap, hoping it'd keep him alive long enough for rescue. I stopped. Then I looked at Corinne. "My son asked for her," I said, while he burned with fever, and she wasn't there. The room went still. You could hear the walls breathing. "She planned this," I said. "She planned it with her friends. She stripped my child's life down to a dollar amount and thought the forest would finish the job." I turned to the judge. "I don't want sympathy. I want justice. I want them held accountable for every second they left my son to suffer, for every lie, every dollar they tried to cash in on his body." The judge gave a slight nod and spoke clear into the microphone. "This court finds there is sufficient evidence to proceed to trial on multiple felony charges, including conspiracy to commit fraud, endangerment of a minor, attempted murder, and falsifying legal documents." Evans slumped. Lila whispered something to her attorney and went pale. Corinne. She didn't blink, but I saw it in her eyes. She knew. It was over. The verdicts came in on a Thursday. Corinne got 15, Evan 12, Tara and Lila 10 each. No parole for the first third. State time, not federal, harder, dirtier. I didn't smile when I heard it, but something in me finally let go. Jeremy and I packed the U-Haul that weekend and left Sacramento behind. We ended up in Astoria, Oregon. Small coastal town, gray skies most days, ocean air that cuts through your clothes. Our place is a 2-bedroom with chipped white siding and a backyard full of blackberry vines. I mow the grass, fix things when they break. I haven't touched code at night in months. Hollow Point's mine again. I cut it down to a 6-person team. No board, no investors, no partners. Just people I trust. We build slow now. Nothing fancy. No press releases. Jeremy adopted a mutt from a shelter in Seaside. Brown fur, ears that don't match. He named him Tower, after the place that saved us. The 2 of them are glued at the hip. Some days I catch him holding the compass, the one I gave him before that hike. Worn down now, scratched all over, but he still carries it in his pocket. Says it's lucky. He never asks about Corinne, except once in a while, when it's late and the house is quiet. "Why'd they do it?" he'll ask, voice soft, not scared, just searching. I never lie. "Because they thought we were in the way," I tell him. He usually nods like he already knew that, then goes back to brushing Tower's ears. Tonight, we dragged all the couch cushions to the living room floor, built a fort with chairs and a blanket. Classic kid stuff. No fancy gadgets. Just flashlights, popcorn, and a stupid movie we didn't finish. Jeremy lay on his stomach inside the fort, chin propped up on his hands. He looked over at me and said, "We didn't go out." It stopped me cold for a second. Then I nodded and smiled. "No," I said, "we didn't."